Good to see you, sir.
Nice to see you, Jeff. It's been a while, and
Yep.
always think of you every time I reminisce about being at Junior and Floss's and sharing that beautiful dining table, breakfast, lunch with them. And in retrospect, uh, you went through a racing career and never had that opportunity. You really missed something. You can be at the Waldorf and Las Vegas and all these places, but if you didn't dine with Junior and Floss, you missed a lot.
No, you did. It was whether it's chicken and rice soup or whether it was country ham and eggs, it didn't matter. It was going to be a delicacy. It was there was just something about what Flossie could do, and Junior was a man of the country. He knew how to grow the stuff, and it was fresh right out of the fields.
Particularly, it was all of the above.
Mm-hmm. It really is. It really was. I mean, I'm excited about you being here today because, as Francis said in his opening comments, I mean, you've been around a long time. You're a man of intelligence and foresight, and I think you can shed some light on a lot of things that I can't, because you were really up in Detroit making a lot of things happen for the boys down south. I think that's the thing that's interesting, is that your years with Chevrolet and General Motors, phenomenal career. I mean, you put it here, your career kind of started with the debut of the Monte Carlo in 1971 when Chevrolet decided to get back into racing, and y'all decided to use Junior Johnson and his race team as a starting point, correct?
Yes, that was the first time Chevrolet had re-entered NASCAR after the ban back in the late 60s. And that was my first exposure to Junior Johnson and the program, and got the direction in March. We qualified at the World 600 in May. Charlie Glotzback was on the pole. He had led every lap, and he got high coming out of the fourth turn. And by the time he got to the first turn, the car was wadded up. But later that year, Charlie won at Bristol, the first victory for the Monte Carlo. And then in 2003, the year I retired, Jimmy Johnson won race number 400 for the Monte Carlo at Pryor, New Hampshire. And that's the most single victories for a model in NASCAR history.
I mean, I didn't know that number existed. I really didn't. I never conceived that car had won 400 races. I mean, folks were talking about, Monte Carlo in 71 and all of the little changes in the body design and everything like that, but it always was the Monte Carlo, and it went through all that and won over 400 races. I think that's, to me, it's mind blowing. I don't think that feat could ever matched, could it?
Not in my time.
Or mine, probably, or mine. But you weren't there as far as done there when it comes to General Motors. You've worked and helped with a lot of different divisions, and to me, where you come, and you and I kind of like had started the personal relationship was, in 1981 when NASCAR decided to downsize cars. We had the fortune of picking from the Chevrolet, the General Motors stables. You had a Chevrolet Monte Carlo, you had the Grand Prix, Oldsmobile Cutlass, and then the Buick Regal. And we chose the Junior Johnson's Buick Regal. And I think, weren't you heading up the Buick racing deal at that time?
Yes, I got to Buick in 1976. General Motors introduced the mid-sized cars in 1978. I lobbied with Bill French Jr. for years until he finally agreed to downsize in 1981. And the Buick turned out by chance to be the best car aerodynamically. And I'd already had some work with Junior before, so going to him was a natural. The other interesting thing about that program is John Cooper from NASCAR had visited Buick, to see how we were doing and how the program was going. In the parking lot that day, he said, does Junior have sponsorship? And I said, well, he typically has Holly Farms and some of that, but I'm not sure about the current program. He said, well, let me give you this number. And he said, call this guy at Mountain View. And that sponsorship happened in the parking lot at Buick that day. And the interesting thing about it, it was a green car. It was green and white. And in that era, green was taboo, of course. And the success was remarkable. You guys won 12 races 2 years in a row. Buick won the manufacturer's championship. Darrell won the driver's championship. And it was really the last true stock car in the definition of what a stock car is. The body was production, had a V8 engine, rear drive. It was a two-door car. And what came after that, of course, the Monte Carlo was body-wise was consistent with a production car, but it was a front drive car. And of course, four-door cars came into vogue also.
It's again, that's something I had never really pondered at this time until we were, getting ready for this program, and I read through some of the notes, and that it really is the last of the stock cars. And what I find so funny is we were trying to take the old existing tread widths and wheelbases and stuff and fit it in this new car that was so much smaller than the Laguna and the Monte Carlo at that time was so big. You didn't have to beat the fenders out at all. And I remember when we first got the Buick, Junior down there and me down there trying to help him, we were trying to put bubbles on the side of this Buick Regal by taking a rosebud, heating it up, and then dropping the body and the car down on the top of a tire and letting it kind of, make its own clearance. And that's where really we had to go back and the start of fabricators being necessary in a race shop with an English wheel, kind of like old school stuff. We couldn't just get by because the cars were so wide back in the early days, they didn't need to beat the fenders out.
Yeah, Junior was really good with a hammer.
Yes, he was. That and the anvil. He had two big ones right there in that middle bay, just in case we needed it. Talk a little bit about the growth of the sport overall, as from your point of view, post pandemic. I mean, it's gone through a pretty big transformation.
Yeah, the digital age has transformed racing more so than I would have expected. The media outlets, the voice of the customer now is very strong, and the multiplication of content, the ability to take things that have always been interesting at the racetrack and during the race and to project them multiple times through multiple media sources. The customers latch on, the spectators latch on to that, and the density and growth of the sport, particularly for the younger age, has come full circle. And so there's no question that the digital age has caught up with racing and accelerated it to the viewership and interest that it has.
Well, after the pandemic or during the pandemic, along comes this next gen car. You made the mention a moment ago about the last really stock race car in the Buick Regal. What's your opinion of this next gen and the direction that you find NASCAR moving in?
I have a better understanding of it after watching Trade this week. A little confused. Steve Phelps commented that it was bringing the stock back into stock car racing, and as a manufacturing guy, I have a little bit of trouble connecting with that. My best understanding came when Justin Marks was on the other day, and he talked about how the next gen car had enabled him to quickly get the top rung in NASCAR in competition. He didn't have to build a lot of infrastructure. He didn't have to hire a lot of people. He could take the car as it received, and do very well with it. And when I understood that, I have to look back and ask myself, okay, if that was an intent in the beginning of the next gen car, what would have happened if Justin Marks and Stackhouse Racing had not been successful as they were? So I think when you look at the structure of NASCAR today and dividing up the income stream, you have franchises, you have multiple people going for the pot. And that's a very powerful force. And you have aging car owners, Jack Roush, Rick, Joe Gibbs, so forth. There's multiple teams. So I think it's a good fact that it's encouraging you younger, certainly different minded people into the series. And Justin Marks is no doubt a disruptor. I mean, I think he understands content better than anyone I've listened to talk about the concept. Another thing I question about the next gen car, for me during my career, my proudest moment was the things we did in safety. The safety innovation program GM launched back in the early 90s and working with Ford, Dr. Olvey, all these different people, Dr. Melvin. We made incredible progress in the areas of safety within the race cars. And consistent with Dale's death in 2001, NASCAR got really aggressive with the safety program, and the existing cars were kind of doing their job. So I'm really puzzled how when the next gen car came along, the aspect of crushability, collapsible structure, energy absorption, all the things that we had spent so much time working on, they commented that they had designed the car for catastrophic, impact. But the fact that we had 2 drivers, maybe 3, injured because of impact is concerning. And it makes me question that who's accountable overall for the next gen car. Is it a committee? Is it an individual or whatever? As far as the car meeting its goals, it's definitely leveled the playing field. And we have, I don't know how many different winners. And at times the competition's good. I have no idea how the cost factors worked out. If guys are operating the black or the red, but in my opinion, it's dominated too much of the story in 2022. The story became the next gen car, not the characters, not the people, not the drivers, not the crew chiefs, not the race action. It all seemed to every day, every time I listened to Sirius XM or a telecast, the subject was the next gen car. And I got pretty tired of that.
Well, I understand where you're coming from, but there's something getting ready to happen this year or coming up in 2023 that I know that it's one of those things that's on the radar for General Motors. And I'm talking about, the 24 Hours of Le Mans and Chevrolet or Cadillac, how General Motors as a whole is getting ready to jump off into trying to compete with this next gen car in a configuration built, with Cadillac. So what's your opinion of that? And where is that leading us as far as, General Motors and NASCAR and everybody who's involved with this Le Mans program?
The overall victory at Le Mans is the most important win for any automobile manufacturer. And when Ford won in 1966, finishing 1, 2, 3, my opinion, it's the greatest success story in the history of American racing. And it's still alive today. What Ford did in 1966 is at the top of the list. This year or next year, when GM goes to Le Mans with the Cadillac program, it represents the biggest investment, the biggest program, potentially the biggest success in the history of General Motors in international competition. So to me, that's what's important, to win the overall race at Le Mans. As to why you would have Project or Garage 56 project, quite frankly, I don't know. It's a sideshow. To me, it's a distraction from what could become the greatest success story in the history of GM racing. And it runs in a very specific category. It's not competing overall. It's not, scored as such and everything. So, Steve Phelps commented that they were trying to spread the global footprint of the next gen car to attract a more international attention. So, if that's the case, then okay, that's a reason to do it, for NASCAR to do it, but for GM to be distracted from their overall, to be the biggest day in racing in the history of the company, I don't have an answer for that.
Well, you mentioned, the relationship between you and Junior Johnson and Flossie. You spent a lot of time in Wilkes County. What are you seeing right now as far as, and how do you feel about the resurrection, you say, of North Wilkesboro and going back to the grassroots of NASCAR and short track racing as a whole? And just, kind of a general overview. What do you see about that when it comes to racing today?
Short track racing was community oriented, was local. It was local, supported by the community and everything. And it was a short track racing. You can sit in the seat and you can see the entire show. And so over the years, the short tracks have not competed, updated and done all the things necessary to compete with the super speedways and the intermediate tracks. And, they can't get enough seats for them except in Bristol. And so short track racing offers excitement and things for the spectator that he doesn't get elsewhere. I think a spectator feels close. He feels a little more intimate with the show. So the new interest in short tracks is not surprising. One thought I've had about it, you go back to the 1994-95 debut of the Craftsman's Truck Series.
Mm-hmm.
In the first couple of years, this series ran at Saugus, Mesa, Tucson. It ran on local short tracks, community-based, and provided fantastic shows. From my perspective, I never quite understood why this truck series was elevated to eventually be the third tier that ran on super speedways. In my mind, trucks just don't fit on a super speedway or an intermediate track. So now that's coming full circle and the new interest in short tracks, it could be an opportunity for the truck series to be reconsidered for short tracks again and more of a local type thing. When we go putting these, the next gen cars on some of these street circuits and short tracks, so far the shows haven't really impressed me that much. You've got a lot of technology, a lot of car, maybe too much of both, trying to compete on a circuit was never intended to compete on.
Okay. Again, you've been around the sport for a long time, and obviously you have seen some of the greatest drivers in our sport. I'd like to get some of your opinion or your observation of people, like a David Pearson and Dale Earnhardt, Richard Petty, for example. I mean, speak to us about the guys you've met, the superstars, and kind of like where they are.
Well, you and I both, Jeff, particularly me, I can go back to the days of Herb Thomas and Curtis Turner
Mhm.
and Fireball and right on up through the years. The Jarretts and the Allisons and Pearsons, Petties and Foyts and Cale Yarborough, Leroy. And I often think about those individuals and just my observation and the way I saw them compete. And so in my mind, I thought about, okay, let's go to a 1 mile track and, give them all the same car. And at the end of the day, what would the results look like? And I think through that process, and I think Earnhardt would probably get over aggressive. Jeff and Jimmy maybe a little bit too conservative. Uh, Richard uh, Richard was always great at recovering from something in front of him and winning a race. And I finally concluded it would come down between uh, David Pearson and Junior. And I had the great pleasure of seeing Junior drive short track, super speedway, everywhere. And my choice is Junior Johnson. It's a little bit of an oxymoron, but I will say that, and you probably feel the same way. In conversation, Junior is the dumbest, smartest individual I ever met.
You're exactly right. I back you up 100% on that right there. He'll make you think, man, what is this guy talking about? And at the same time, if you listen, he's telling you something. You just got to hear him.
There's no doubt that as a driver, this is way
Yeah.
before he was wired. And the guy closest to him, I think, in that respect would be AJ. So anyway, I like to think about that possibility.
So during your era, we hear so much about, because we just talked about Le Mans, Ford versus Ferrari. In your time, how did you see the competition between manufacturers? Was
Strictly Ford versus Chevy.
Yeah.
Even though GM had 4 divisions competing in some series, Chevrolet was always the dominant, except at the time I was at Buick, and Buick was the dominant. But it was always Chevy versus Ford. You go back and you read Joe Dudall, his columns back in the Detroit News back in that era, the headline is always Ford versus Chevy. And in watching the motorsports managers speak in the recent, this week, they speak more from an ambassador standpoint or an interested party or a very condescending attitude with the sanctioning organization and everything. And that's necessary today. But Michael Kranitz and I, we were serious. We didn't speak a lot. We respected each other, but my job was to beat Ford. And I'll never forget in an interview at the Hilton there in Charlotte one time, I think we had just won our 9th manufacturers championship, 11 in a row if you count the 2 at Buick. So Michael and I were on a panel, and Economaki asked Kranitz, he said, well, Michael, how do you feel about the manufacturers championship? And Kranitz just poo-pooed it. Not important, just blew it off. And I put my hand on Michael's shoulder. I said, Michael, how do you know that? You've never won one. Another thing, Ford versus at the Waldorf Astoria at the banquet every year, we always had our manufacturers cups. And we had them on display, like 9, 15, I don't know how many. So we were in there one year, and Earnhardt and everybody was laughing and enjoying champagne. And Ernie Irving showed up at the door with Edsel Ford. And we asked him later, Ernie, what'd you tell Edsel? And he said, I wanted to see what a manufacturer's cup looked like.
Oh, me. Well, Herb, it has been a pleasure, sir. It's good to see you. We've got to stay in touch and get together again sometime, especially when you come down to check out Bowman Gray, which I know is one of your favorite places to go when you are in town. I'll come over and join you, and we'll eat a hot dog, and we'll smell some rubber going around Bowman Gray.
Be a pleasure, Jeff. Thank you. Thank you, Judy and Francois.
It's an honor to have you on. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Registering on ePowertrade is easy. To start, click on the Join for Free button on the homepage. First, search your company to see if it's already in our database. If you see your company on the list, click on it to select it. Then, choose Claim Company if you are one of the decision makers, an owner, marketing person, or main company contact. Or choose Join Company if you are an employee, and press Continue. If you couldn't find your company in our database, select Register a New Company. On the following page, fill out your name, email, phone number, job title, and choose a secure password. If you chose Register a New Company, you'll need to choose your business type. Select Supplier if you're looking to display products or services and connect with buyers. Choose Racing Business if you're looking to source new parts and connect with suppliers. Choose Race Team if you own or are a member of a professional race team. Then, enter your company name. Please provide a website, Facebook page, or LinkedIn if you have one, and choose to either claim or join the company. You can view and agree to our terms of use here. If you'd like to receive our weekly newsletter, choose Accept. Finally, click Register Now and your registration will be submitted for approval. An email will be sent to your inbox. Please confirm your email address and you will be approved shortly. Welcome to ePowertrade.